So today I'm at Price Park and we're going to try the Green Knob Loop Trail. Lots of flowers up here in these meadows. There's some red clover. Looks like some oxeye daisies mixed in there. Fleabane. And then a variety of yellow flowers. I think false dandelion and possibly more. So that is Sims Pond. The mountain laurels are still blooming here along the lake. And we're now also seeing the first flowers on the Rose Bay rhododendron. So that is the white blooming rhododendron. You find this all over the woods here. It loves the shade. So these often have pink buds that then open up into white flowers. Here we have an anemone. This is also called tall thimbleweed. It's got these white flowers and pretty characteristic dissected leaves. You can see those there. These are just now starting to bloom. They all look very fresh. Flower buds just opening up here. So here we have a rattlesnake plantain sending up its flower stalk. So these typically bloom July, August. Little creek crossing here. So that is Sims Creek, which feeds Sims Pond, surprisingly. And the trail continues over there. Lots of these rattlesnake plantains here getting ready to bloom. This seems to be a nice trail for orchids. So here we're seeing mountain wood sorrel again, and this one's blooming. We have a flower right there, another one up here. Found some partridge berries in bloom. One more jack in the pulpit here. These have a very long bloom time, apparently. Some mayapple foliage still up here along this trail. And sweet cicely with fruits. We have some more round-leaved yellow-violet foliage. Another creek crossing here. So we'll have to do some rock hopping. Here the trail is taking us through what some people refer to as a rhododendron hell. It's pretty much all Rose Bay rhododendron. So yeah, if you look up, pretty much all you see above you are rhododendron leaves. It gets pretty shady in here. And here in the deep shade underneath the rhododendrons, we've got something very special. That is actually an orchid. It's the Appalachian twayblade. They're tiny. Sometimes you see these scrolls on the rhododendrons. That is a fungus. So this is one that infects blueberries, azaleas, and rhododendrons. And it makes these, what they call rhododendron apples. They're not really apples, of course. They're just the fungus inducing a tumor on the plant. And then the white covering is the spores for the fungus. And on the rhododendrons, you often see these tiny little mushrooms that grow out of dead branches. They are very characteristic for these rhododendron thickets. No idea what they are, but you see a lot of them out here. So we're getting away from the creek now, and closer to the parkway. Lots of big trees in this area. So this one right there, that's a Fraser magnolia. If we look into the canopy, you see those big leaves. If you look at them more closely, you see the lobes at the base of the leaves. So that's Fraser magnolia. And here we have some of last year's magnolia fruits on the ground underneath this tree. This big one right there, next to the magnolia, that's a hemlock. And this one actually looks like it's still doing okay. If we look into the canopy, it's still got its needles up there. A lot of the hemlocks are dead. It's hard to see with all the other trees in front of it. But this is still alive. Here we have another one of these big old hemlocks. And this one too still has its foliage. Up close and personal here with one of these giant hemlock trees along this trail. This one's growing right next to the trail. You can touch it. It's huge. It's a shame that the woolly adelgid is killing all these old hemlocks. And here we see the problem with the hemlocks. This one has been infested by that woolly adelgid. So those white dots that you see on there, that's the adelgid feeding on the tree. And eventually that will kill the tree. Mountain laurel blooming in the shade of the woods here. Here we have an entire tree trunk covered with that leafy liverwort that we saw at Roan Mountain. Now this plant here in the understory, that's a club moss. They're actually not mosses at all. They're more related to the ferns. These here are making spores. You can see the sporangia in the form of these yellow pockets that you see at the base of the leaves. We've got some white blooms here. I believe that's honewort. Here we have a plant that looks familiar to me. This is growing as a weed around my yard. It's got these white flowers that resemble blackberries, so it's in the rose family. And this is actually a relative of the endangered spreading avens that we've seen at Roan Mountain yesterday. So we're right underneath the parkway now. This is the bridge that crosses Sims Creek if you're driving along the parkway. Here we have a lot more of that club moss coming up. This is actually an evergreen. You see these all year, even through the winter. This almost looks like club moss, but it's actually a true moss. So that is what we call tree moss. There's more of it here in the shade along the trail. Again, lots of mushrooms out. This, I believe, is some form of amanita. Yeah, they're poisonous. Don't eat them. I thought I smelled it, and yes, we do have some Galax here. Still blooming. The yellow sinkfall is still in bloom here as well. Another creek crossing. Evidence of tulip trees. Nice big seed capsules on the trilliums along the trail here. Yet another creek crossing. Here we seem to have some Hexastylus, or wild ginger, along the trail. It has these shiny, waxy looking leaves, and they're all heart-shaped. Not fully sure which one it is. It seems to be done blooming for the year.